So I thought I'd make this video, and I don't know if this video is gonna be allowed to be posted because I made like another hour video the other day and I had to delete it on my phone because I was uploading it and it takes all night for me to upload it because it's really bad reception down here. So I end up having to just delete it because it's just like it, drains the battery and whatnot. So hopefully this video will make it to the internet. So and so much. I think to myself, how much of this material, mental material, can people remember? Sometimes, and I've always said this. I always felt like my memory was a bit of a curse. That I can remember things in numbers at times. Sometimes it feels like there isn't very many people that can do as clean as accurate, and there's no way to prove this. Some of the things that I have to say, but I know that they did happen, and it's a tug of war with, it's just dog shit, It's like it ain't worth anything because there's no value to it anymore. How much of what I have to say people really take in, and how crucial it is because you have Michael Jackson coming into the picture and all this fucking rancid shit happened. And the more I remember how dark and cynical people's behaviors were, including many of the teachers, and what of a big a war it was against Frankie and me, and the stories that I'm watching, and they had their eyes on Michaela and my biological father, and I remember like Miss McKinney, Miss Gillard, and Miss Heather, and there was my 5th grade year, and it's the only time that I was thinking, that I could make possible straight A's, and I remember the material was very easy to me because the prior year I had a lot of tutoring, so when I got to 5th grade, the material was very easy to me. I mean, I remember not having to study, and I remember I could just brainstorm and look over various types of things, or even in spelling, and I was able to make better grades than everybody very quickly. And I made an average grade in class, and there's always discrimination because I'm Mexican, just like anywhere else, right? And I remember, and I talked about this in my other video, where I calculated that I made straight A's, and I knew that I did, because the prior year to that I was trying to get, as a matter of fact, crazy thing, believe this or not, I was told that they can actually retrieve for presidents the 1st grade report card. They can go and track that down. But anyway, and I remember trying to get, and I remember I was like, pretty close to it. I was like, man, I can get straight A's. I know I can, because I wasn't even really, I felt like I wasn't trying not really 100 all that much. And I remember I was in band class as well, and that's a whole nother story too. And I remember, and I talked about this, the teacher, and I knew that she had intentionally wrote a fake grade on there because she just didn't want me to get a straight A's. And that was it, right? So, but you got to understand that when I'm in this class, and there's so much attention because of Michael Jackson and Frankie being raped and Miguel, that all the teachers and the transgenders and gays, they're fucking like wildfire coming into this. Every detail of my mother, because of all the stories that I've ever shared about Good Elementary, it makes me think, wait a minute, if I didn't know that, if I could have no memory and I had been groomed that this guy didn't rape Frankie, and but that really did happen, and the Michael Jackson thing happened, that's exactly why that teacher did this, and this is why my mom was crying when she went into the teacher's class over here, and this is what Miss Gillard said. I didn't know this, but I didn't. Miss Gillard, to my understanding, was a transgender, but she was like a big transgender. She was like 6'1", 6'2", but she person looked pretty feminine, and I recall being. I remember Miss Heather and Miss Gillard would always talk, and they were investigating Michaela to why Michaela was even born. And I remember, you got to understand that adults will talk in front of kids, not recognizing and believing in the kids really don't get a grip and understanding of what they're talking about because they're just trying to chatter, 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 chatter. But I really didn't understand, but I was paying attention. And I remember they were bickering and saying, is that why he got that because of him? Oh, okay. And then they would go, and then like next period, next class, next day, I remember they would always talk, and they say, yeah, he got her because of him. And they're talking about Miguel. Because the reason my biological father got with a white, blue-eyed German girl was because it was to cover up and quickly sort of neutralize the situation the best way, because they'll sell you women. That they sold my biological father a white woman, and then that's how he got Michaela into the picture. Because, you know, you got to keep in mind, back in those days, it was a very different time. People didn't have cell phones, and you know, and I think if I remember correctly, whoever can look this up, I think that when I was in 5th grade, it was around the time he went to prison, because they were talking about that. And I don't know if it was for drinking and driving. I want to say I don't know if it was for drinking or driving, but I think it's important for me to talk about, because so many people want to defend and protect Miguel, keep him where he is, and Diana, but you're not going to go to prison for 20 fucking years. And I remember intentionally the teachers brought me and Michaela across each other more than once. One was in the hallway and I drew the pictures, and then whenever we were having the NASA conference, the astronaut in class, and I remember I was about to approach the situation. I remember looking at Michaela, and it was kind of weird to me, because I thought like she was a part of me or was like related. And I was like, this girl's really pretty. And I sort of paused, and I remember thinking, you know, I'm going to just let the kids go ahead. And I remember Michaela, like, with all the other little kids, quickly all ran up, jumped up, like literally, they looked like a ground of puppies with this white, blonde hair, Ken Cooper looking guy. Like little puppies. They were like, oh, well, they were literally and the guy stood there like this, just looking at him. They all looked like little puppies, just all kind of like doing that. And I recall sort of pausing. I was like, oh, I won't, mess that up. Or I'm just going to leave that alone. Let the kids just kind of, I'd listen to what he had to say. But I wanted to, meet the individual, right? But I remember going back to class, and the teacher was just staring at me, because they were analyzing the situation. And I remember Miss Heather goes like this. He goes, and they were just watching my behavior. And I remember I telling Miss Heather, and I said, because these teachers would come over to me, just like many other teachers and adults do this when they also want to victimize kids. They say, how many brothers and sisters do you have? I say, I got just 2 brothers. You don't have any sisters? No, I don't got any sisters. My sister lives next door to me, and is the one that's disabled with Down syndrome. And I'm thinking, because I had mentioned, when I grew up in Good Elementary, I always, anytime that I ever mentioned more of my brothers or sisters that I believed at the time, I always said, oh, my dad had a first marriage and he had 3 kids. And he says, they're my 2 half-brothers and a half-sister, but they're a lot older than me. And I've only met them a couple of times. And I'd always tell my teachers that, so they knew that. So, bingo, they immediately know that I'm not saying anything about this little girl that's shitting and throwing up herself, walking up and down the sidewalks. So anyway, I thought I would say something about this, because I remember I just getting these flashes of Gillard and what she was saying, and Miss Heather, you know, and Miss McKinney, Miss Shocker, you know, and I guarantee you that and you know what's the most frightening situation about this whole situation? The most frightening is there was a story about this police officer. There used to be police officers once a year that would show up to our school, and they would stand in front of the podium in front of all the entire school, not just part of the entire school. And so the officers, they'd show up to give a speech to these kids because they don't want, and they would bring their dog, and they would bring a briefcase full of all the different drugs that are available on the market so the kids would know what they look like. But they're all neutralized, and they're all inside a fucking, you know, glass briefcase, and they open up, it's in glass, little glass pockets on there where you can see what they are, because you don't want kids to be doing drugs. And I remember this is one of the most frightening situations, and they did this in front. This is a full-blown gay community riot. There was I think I want to say I was in 5th grade when this happened, or 4th grade. And I was, there was 2 officers that showed up, and they would always bring their dog. And they brought their dog, you know, their canine dog. And everybody's like, oh, wow, the dog knew how to bark on command. You know how kids are, right? And I was never, you know, I remember approaching the drug situation, you know, looking at all these narcotics because of all the different chemicals. I was like, oh, where's all this stuff, you know? And it's funny, you know, when you think about it, you're like, oh, you know that one's going to do drugs later in life. But I remember being there, and there was a man and a woman. It was a blonde woman, a dirty blonde, to a brunette officer. I want to say she was a real female. She was authentically a female. She could have been a transgender. I don't think they had allowed transgenders to be officers at that time. But I know that this other officer, was a homosexual. And I remember his chin. He got into some sort of car wreck, but his chin was deformed. Like, he looked like he got in some sort of car wreck, and it was like fucking like fucked up. Like, he had this nasty crickle, looked like he had gotten into a car wreck and damage or some sort of injury to his chin. But everything was fine with him. And I could tell this guy was gay. He was a masculine gay guy. And I recall that he talked about, and he said that he had, and this is how he milks the situation, and he talks about, and he says that he had to go, and there was a kid there was a group of teenagers, there was 2 kids that were running across the street after going to the mall, and I don't remember if they snuck out or whatever, but he said they went to the mall, and I want to say it was near Vista Ridge Mall, possibly, I think. But it was they were on their way to the mall, and at night, they both ran across the street, and one of the kids got hit by a car and killed. And he was one of the first people on the scene. And I don't remember if he said he knew the kid, but he was one of the first people on the scene of a dead kid, and he was like 12 years old, and he got hit by a car on the highway. And so he sort of chuckles up, like some like emotional, like he goes like this, you know, and you know, in front of audience, and kind of looks away. So he does this. So he does this. He goes, he chuckles, and he's chuckling. He chuckles, and he kind of, you know, to an audience, and he goes like this, and he's walking over here, and then immediately that's where the woman kind of like steps, you know, takes a step, and there's only 2, it's a small podium, right, or whatever, stage at Good Elementary, for those that remember, and she kind of just starts taking over, like, trying to regroup, you know, understand that this death was really bad, it was a kid, you know, it was a car wreck, he saw it, or like he was on the scene, one of the first people on the scene. And I remember as he's walk over here, he walks very far. Remember Miguel? And so then he turns around and he does this, and he's looking, he goes, and so he's sizing up this police officer. He's doing this to his own police officer. This one's a real woman. I'm almost positive this one was a real woman. And I don't think she knew, because I don't believe that heterosexual female knew. I really don't believe that police officer heterosexual, because a heterosexual police, a real female police officer, real female, she finds out a little kid gets raped, and she's an officer, she will regulate on that motherfucker. Like she's an officer. The women generally do. Real women, you generally do that. But when it's an officer, you know that woman wants to use that power. A homosexual cop, I've been around too many of them, feeling sorry for the piece of shit and just retaliating against me and Frankie. There's just too many circumstances that happen. And I remember this police officer was sort of standing, and he was like looking at the female, and you could tell that this woman, that this guy, and I remember him, he was real close at the very off stage to the very side, like the distance of where Miguel would have been. Because you got to keep in mind, I'm somewhere in the front, somewhere in like the third or fourth row, and I'm looking and I'm talking, and when I think about this, I'm like, because everything is going like wildfire. All the homosexuals and transgenders, the gays all know about this. This is about Michael Jackson, protecting a Michael Jackson entity. About the rapes, he sells the tickets. Fuck everybody else. They don't give a fuck. Let Frankie get raped in his fucking ass. We're gonna clean up afterwards. This is Michael Jackson. And the president did that shit. They could have put it. There's no way you could have put Michael Jackson in that picture. That was a fucking curse. Michael Jackson was a goddamn motherfucking curse, because it brought pain and suffering that nobody could have seen other than me and my mother. And this police officer, I remember, was standing in a stance, and he was feeling sorry, and he's looking at this police officer, because he thinks and he knows this police officer. You never know. This police officer might know about Frankie getting raped. But remember, gay police officer knows how to protect Michael Jackson and McGill, right? Because he just, Ken Cooper, remember? All that gossip, how that gossip's all in the police department, right? And so she begins talking, and you can tell, I can tell by looking at them, that woman, I don't think, knows about Frankie being raped. He 100% does. So I think it's important that I make a discussion about this. I make a talk about this, because if Tara, it's even more worse that I think that, god damn, like they knew all about this fucked up shit and they're just playing my mom stupid. Like, it makes sense how, like, whenever I was in first grade and I was like in ESL class, and they put me in there and they only had me there for like 6 weeks or some shit. And I remember this bleached, platinum-haired woman that spoke fluent Spanish, but I think she was like Mexican. She could have been half Mexican or half white, but she was a blonde woman. And I recall, being in the ESL class, and they didn't have me because I spoke too good of English, but I remember my mother going in there and crying on several occasions, because my mom was always really desperate, crying to people, like just belligerently crying, like trying to find some compassion. My husband drinks a lot, and she's like, I've been through so much. These motherfuckers, and I remember she was just like, get the fuck away, yeah, because I don't want to. You're about to tell me about he got raped, and you can't do anything about it. I don't want to get involved in this, because many of them didn't want to get involved with it. Many of them didn't. And what they would do is just shut the doors on my mother. And that was 100%, because it was going like wildfire. Every fucking body was having a talk about Frankie being raped. They knew where he lived. The police officers knew about it. And there was nothing that could be done. But I thought I'd make a video on this, because, there's no way to prove any of it anymore, and it's what good is it now, and I wish I wouldn't have been groomed the way that I was. That's the more frightening thing of it. I honestly believe that I was groomed more harshly than I actually realized, because when I'm watching Miguel and Diana, if you watch their behavior and what they were doing and what they were saying, and how Diana was fucking playing my mother like the biggest horse of shit you would even, just full of dog, just fucking retard. Like, and it's so crazy because it's the same concept on how I didn't know Frankie got raped, or I had flashes of it, but there was no conversation, and yet we were friends with him, and people were coming after me for it. And so every time they project that thought and memory to me, I don't really sense other than there's a sort of frustration, but I don't put a relation to that's why. And it's so fucked up. It's really fucked up to me because it terrorizes me. If I got groomed like that, imagine what happened to Frankie. And I remember, I would have blurted out that fucking shit, but I had told my mother as a kid, and I had a conversation with Frankie. I was like, hey, how come you don't like Miguel? And I had said this to Frankie before, like, there had been something that issued, or like why he really didn't want to have a conversation, or he may have came across like, fuck him, or he said, I don't know, I don't care, I don't care, and he would say, I don't care. How come you don't care? It's Miguel. And I would say this to, I'm like, and this is before me being like 15, 16 years old, and saying, hey, how come you don't like Miguel? Or he's looking out the window saying, fuck him. And I remember him just like really mad playing hoops, as he was shooting hoops by himself, and he never did that. And I remember. And so, the fucked up thing is, my mother's not in any mental state to know what the fuck's going on anymore, and I'm the only truth teller, and it doesn't matter anymore. But I remember Frankie. I remember as a kid, I remember hearing Frankie, and I was about, I was like 9 years old, 10 years old. It was years before, it was like a couple years, at least I would say a couple years before my father's suicide, which was when I was about to turn 13. It was late 12 years. I was 12 years old, and it was like sort of around Julian's birthday, October or some shit. And I remember Frankie thinking, and he said, maybe I should just hang myself. He goes, yeah, and there wasn't anything like on TV, and he sort of made it in a comical, kind of crazy way that he said it. And I remember his eyes sort of being kind of dense and red. And I remember just doing this and looking. And I was like, and he said it in a way that he meant it. Like he was considering it. But, Frankie was 12 to 13 years old when he said that. I was about 9, 10, because Frankie's 4 years older than me. And, none of it matters. Nobody gives a fuck. You got so many people all over the fucking place doing all this fucked up shit. So many fucking disgusting fucking people. Fucking, but what that put on the magnitude table, and, that was a fucking curse. That was a fucking curse. It brought nothing but nightmares. And they're smart. They're going to say, it's because you just problems everywhere. You needed to spot it, and it's right there. And then I clean up. There's no hope for my mother. I threw in the towel a long time ago for that shit. They're going to get it. Because I know in that fight I won. And I would have won. But they lied. They know how to electronic devices to the brain, make excuses, put new understandings, staple certain actions, and then get other people to do it. It's just not going to go anywhere. They're going to get what they want and make up their story, and they're going to get whatever trophy that they want. They're going to get it. They're going to fucking get it, and they did. But anyway, I thought as worthless as this is, it is dog shit now. What my mother. I think it's like, God, man, I remember these fucking teachers, these motherfuckers, and it makes me think like, Michaela, the fact that she was half white probably fucking put so much blessing in my fucking life, you know, because it was a ran shit war to protect him and feel sorry for him. I remember the doors, because you got to keep in mind the reference of everything of all these teachers and fucking counselors even that are doing this at Good Elementary. They position me like I am the house, and just right over there is the fucking rapist, the child rapist. And I remember her. I remember there was like a counselor way down the fucking hall, and I remember slamming the door. But you got to see that, understand that the way that they justify a fucking guy punching the shit out of a kid or just fucking him was, I'm just going to show him and we're just going to do this to him. Yeah, slam the door and I'm going to show him gay attitude. No, motherfucker. It's 35 years in a fucking penitentiary, fucking 4 fucking walls and the same sloppy Joe and a fucking maximum security prison with a bunch of crazy motherfuckers or even like you and fucking worse. And they're going to find out what you fucking do, and you're going to be around those motherfuckers. Child molesters are the worst types of people that they fucking hate in fucking penitentiaries. And of all the fucking people, they're child molesters. No, he made a Michael Jackson mistake. That's what he did. Michael Jackson mistake. Oh, yeah, that's what he gets. But you get to stay in your house, and you get to do what the fuck you want. Eat, don't drive, get a job, all this other shit. It's insane. It's really boggling because I don't like thinking about it, yet I feel guilty about it at times because it's like, well, maybe I should, maybe talk about this more. But it's just, it is useless now, but it's just like, it's frightening to know that this never got unheard, never got spoken of, and there's nothing that could be done about it. But he was really fucked up. Really, really fucked up. And I'm going through the school of memories, and I could just watch how the teachers, how they're fucking behaving in gay community riots, like for the gay community, for the riots, for the lesbians, for the fucking gays. We unite. The gays keep it a secret from Michael Jackson, the spirit of Michael Jackson, the spirit of a mental fucking, the president, the movement. Because this is a very, very different time. Social media is on fucking people's phones. Back then it wasn't. Nobody will ever outsell. See, as I'm making this fucking video, there's fucking transgender crazy motherfuckers keeps hitting shit and they're electrocuting me, and I just felt something on my chest, and there's a crucifix right there if you could see it. So as I'm talking about this is how they clean up their dog shit, because now it's about cleaning up what they want for the movement. This is why I can't do anything. Because that is the same type of behavior that they did to me and Frankie to keep our mouths shut. Because you got to understand, the teachers are extremely engaging. Like, they're wanting to have a conversation, and they're asking me questions all the time. And I'm in 5th grade. When I'm in 4th grade with Miss Lowry, when I'm Miss Berger, Miss Wahlberg, when I'm in Miss Parker's class, when I'm in Miss Garland's class, when I'm in Miss Hall's class in 1st grade, or Miss Nelson, my and the thing is, which is all weird, me, Frankie, and Julian, believe it or not, and I've said this before, I don't know whether who remembers or not, but we all failed the 1st grade, all of us, me, Frankie, and Julian. We all failed the 1st grade and had to be held back. I was the only one that, when I was in 1st grade, last couple months, I had this spurt of fucking, like, really smart shit. I don't know what the fuck. I don't know what happened. And so they moved me up, and I talked about this, and all of a sudden I became really good at math. So I remember going to they put me in 2nd grade for like a month, and then they say, okay, now we'll just put them in 1st grade too. And so then they decided to move me back, because I don't think my academics, probably any other categories, were so much better. They were a little bit better, but it was astounding. I went from not getting every math question wrong to getting them all right better and faster than anyone. And so I thought I would make a video on this, because the more images that I get of what the teachers were doing, and this was a full-blown homosexual war.